All right, we got the Screen Team. We've got movie reviews for you right here on KWOC. We'll get to Hardin's next movie review here in just a second. I want to remind you, you can check out the Screen Team. We're all over the place. We're on Facebook. You can also check us out on YouTube. We're on Twitter. And check out our official website at ScreenTeamPB.com. Like I said, being joined by Hardin here, and we are getting ready to review a movie called Nosferatu The Vampyre. And for those of you who are familiar with cinema, one of the scariest movies of all time is the original Nosferatu, back from the early to late 20s, somewhere around there.
I think the mid-20s, late 20s, I think, right.
I think it was a silent film, was it? Yeah,
it was a silent film, right.
And it was just creepy because you got this guy who's got these, long fingernails, and he's got the Dracula kind of physique and body, and he's not saying much because it's silent, but it's just so eerie, that original one. So this one is a kind of a retooling, a rebirth, a reboot. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I would say so.
I knew if I just kept talking,
that's the common word now. Reboot.
The correct word would come out. Tell us, how did you get introduced to this film, Hardin?
Well, I like Leonard Maltin's movie book, where his team critiques movies, and I looked at what they said about the Max Schreck, which is the early one, Nosferatu, and they said he's the ugliest vampire in history. Well, then right under it, of course, alphabetically, is Nosferatu The Vampyre with Klaus Kinski, and I'm familiar with Klaus Kinski, and he's kind of odd. So finally I got around to watching it, and I don't really try to make them compete. I like both of them very much. They're similar and different, but that's how I was suggested to watch the newer one, give it a try.
Yeah. I don't have all the details in front of me, but I was reading, and I was like, okay, what's the difference between Nosferatu and Dracula? Why do you have two different names? And I guess it was some sort of legal thing that you couldn't say Dracula if you didn't have the rights.
Right. Way I understand it, when I think F.W. Murnau did Nosferatu in the 20s, it was still under copyright with Bram Stoker. And so he could not use the name Dracula. So he called him Count Orlok and named it Nosferatu. And I understand that Stoker and his estate or whatever tried to even get that. And they tried to burn all the copies of Nosferatu, I believe. I may be wrong on that. But it came out, and he got around that by thinly changing the names.
Yeah. So tell us about this new Nosferatu. Actually, it's not new. It's back from the
79,
from the 70s. But tell us about this one. Does it kind of scare you in the same way that the original does?
I would say no. Yes and no, but mainly no, because it's in color and it has a different way of doing it. Now, he is called Dracula in it, even though the title of the movie is Nosferatu. The copyright had gone out, so he's able to call him Count Dracula. But the new one is really ethereal, kind of a sleepy, dreamy, often hazy presentation of the story.
Right.
And, so many times black and white is creepier in its own way, and I love black and white movies, but this one is scary in a different way, even though the Nosferatu character is still pretty much similar.
Yeah. This movie gave me the creeps, man, which is what it's supposed to do. It's what it's supposed to do. And what I appreciated about this film was the fact that, you watch all these new movies that come out today, and they've got, they're filled with CGI, and they're filled with loud sounds and sound effects and music and stuff like that. Where this one is simple, traditional movie making, and they do it in such a way that it just, while you're watching it, it just gives you the creeps. And it does what this movie was intended to do, which is to, scare you. It's supposed to be a somewhat of a horror film, and that's what I appreciate about this film.
Yes.
I've got some issues and some rubs on the film, notably the dialogue and the stuff. But the reason with the dialogue is because they had these German actors both perform it both in German and also re-record it in English. So, right. I mean, you can't blame them too much on that. You know what I mean? I can barely speak one language,
Yeah,
so,
right. So don't ask me to do that. Right?
Yeah. So, I appreciate that this movie just had a creepy feel. It had, wasn't done in green screen. It was done on,
right.
original set designs, and I appreciate that. What were your thoughts on the whole atmosphere of the movie?
Well, I thought the character Dracula or Warlock, whatever, was creepy in a different sort of way. The original one was kind of gross and macabre, while Klaus Kinski was similar but sickening and putrefying almost. He just was, and he just had an atmosphere and a creepiness in some ways matched or exceeded it. Yeah. But yeah, when you combine the Warlock or the Dracula character with the atmosphere and the storyline, I think it was beautiful in a way, but it was very haunting and creepy in another way.
One of the creepy scenes was towards the end of the movie where they had all those rats all over the place, man. You remember that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
tell us about that.
If you're scared of rats, don't watch it. But Dracula brings a whole bunch of coffins, and they're full of rats. And they literally take over the city, and we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands. And it's not a good thing because people start dying by the droves. So that's a bad thing. The rats were bad.
And this goes back to my earlier point. If this movie was made today, that scene would be done all in CGI, and it would lose that effectiveness. Where this one, I don't know what they used, but it looked real to me. You know what I mean?
I heard that they found a whole bunch of rats. It was hard to find them all. They probably used different filming techniques, but they mainly found white ones and painted them gray. So
I heard
read
too.
that this morning.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're who's going to like this film, Hardin?
I think someone that doesn't have to have slam bam action or really, and that you don't care about a really handsome, suave Dracula. It's kind of artsy, but not too much. But if you kind of like something a little different that takes its time and develops itself and is really just a creepy, surreal, haunting atmosphere throughout, then I think you ought to give it a try because it holds up well, I think, with the original.
Good stuff. The movie's called Nosferatu The Vampyre, and you can find it on DVD. Coming up after the break, we're going to review the Paul Newman film HUD. It's next on KWOC.